Okay, let me start again. Thank you everybody for joining in on today's webinar. It's amazing, we've got 29 people on this call today, which is totally mind-blowing for me. So what we thought we would do today is to, first of all, introduce our team who are all here today, and talk a little bit about functional medicine to those of you that are not really aware of what functional medicine is. And then we put out some questions on Facebook, and we decided to pick out some of the questions and answer them today. So we're going to cover a few different topics, and feel free to ask questions, and I'll try and see if I can answer them. I'll get my team to answer them as we're going along, and we'll see how we go on. Is that okay? So first of all, I want to say who I am, and then we'll just invite my team to just say a little hello from them. So my name is Dr. Indra. I have been a GP for nearly 17, 18 years now, and decided to use or learn about functional medicine as a result of my own health journey. After being a GP for 15 years, I realized that actually my patients were not really getting any better, and I was getting burnt out myself. So I found this way of working, and it absolutely blew my mind, and I knew that that's exactly how I wanted to work. So I decided to open up my practice, and the practice opened about 4 years ago, and now we are a team of 8 of us. So I want to first of all introduce Dr. Ailsa. Dr. Ailsa is our another GP who works in Huddersfield, and you've done British Society of Ecological Medicine training as well, Ailsa, is that right?
Yeah.
And we have Dr. Meeta.
Hello.
Dr. Meeta is also a GP in the Wakefield area, and she also has trained as a Kundalini yoga teacher. We have our nutritional therapist, Shakila.
Hello.
Shakila has trained through the band, and has also done IFM training. And we have 2 health coaches. We have Roz.
Hi there.
And we have Fiona. Fiona, you're muted, so you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
Always technical issues. And this is our clinical team, and then our back office admin team. We have Sarah.
Hi.
So Sarah is our patient manager, and she's the one that sort of organizes all our calls and our appointments and does all of that for us. And then we have Elaine.
Hello there.
Elaine is my virtual assistant, and she's my right-hand person that helps me get everything done. So this is our team, and we're just going to do a little starter on what is functional medicine. So, can everybody see that screen okay? My team? Everybody's all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we are the Specialist Functional Medicine Practice. We tried to shorten it down to SFMP, but that's a little bit of a mouthful, but we're getting used to it. So, a functional medicine approach to health. So, first of all, really, this is a bit of a disclaimer to say that, this is not to provide medical advice. It's very general. We're giving you some basic principles as to how we work, but you really need to be working with a practitioner or speaking to a professional before making any changes to your lifestyle. So who are we? As I said, we are a multidisciplinary functional medicine clinic. We're based in Leeds and in Manchester, and now we are solely online as a result of COVID. And that's actually been really helpful for us. And as I've said, who our team is. Ooh. So we were founded in 2015, and last year in December, we actually got Care Quality Commission registration. So we're waiting for our first CQC visit in the next year or so. I've also got Institute of Functional Medicine certification as well. So what is functional medicine? Now, this is a question I get asked all the time for people that don't know what functional medicine is. It sometimes feels as though it's a little bit of a faffy thing, but in essence, this is an approach to health and well-being, and it allows us to find out why patients are experiencing what they're experiencing. We get to the root cause of the illness. When we're talking about functional medicine, there are sort of 5 key principles that we're working with. And this is what makes it very unique, very patient-centered. Just one second. Oh. So these are the 5 core principles which we work with. The first one is that our bodies have an innate capacity to heal. Our bodies know exactly what it needs and how to heal. I always say to my patients that the symptoms that you're experiencing are your body's way of sending you a love letter. It knows that you're out of balance. How are we going to help you get back into balance? We're all genetically unique. Now, this is really important when we're answering one of the questions today about genetics. Each of us have our own history that we bring with us, our own genetics that we carry with us, and our own lifestyle that we hold in our framework. The third one is inflammation. Now that's quite a key one, because inflammation, we know, is the root of chronic illness. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. The fourth one is that it's a very scientific approach to understanding and rebalancing the biochemistry. So there is a lot of science involved in it. There may not be a lot of evidence base behind it, but this is all coming and growing as we are growing in understanding. And the fifth one, which is also quite a key one, is that we want to actually achieve a state of vitality. So it's not just about abnormal and normal. We want to feel vital. We want to feel that we can do what we want to do in our lives. And it's not just merely, as they say here, an absence of disease. So when we're working with all of these things, when we're asking our questions and taking our history, we're trying to find out what are the main triggers for inflammation. So in every condition that we're going to be talking about, there are going to be elements of this in people's stories that actually makes us understand why inflammation is sitting in that person's body. So we have stress, which everybody can associate with, and there's always stress in some part of a patient's history. Toxins, which could be environmental toxins, it could be medications that you're taking, it could be mercury fillings, those kind of things. Infections such as gut dysbiosis or yeast infections or chronic sinus type infections, anything like that. Any nutrient insufficiencies, because you need to have adequate nutrients in your body to be able to mount an immune response and then calm the body right the way back down again. Then we have allergies of food intolerances. These also obviously increase your immune system and therefore cause inflammation. There are others, but these are the top 5 things that we're looking for when we're taking a history. So we're going to start with our first question. Carol asked us on Facebook, how can we best boost our immunity through nutrition? And I found as I've grown older, my energy levels have lessened. Is there anything I can do to improve this? So I'm going to hand it over to Michaela, who is our nutritionist and absolutely loves food.
Yeah, absolutely. I do, yeah. So, Carol, it's a really good question, especially sort of like with this sort of at this time of year and what we're all experiencing. So I would say that my top 3 foods to build resilience and support the immune function are quite sort of like simple and easy to get hold of. So it would be lemon, ginger and turmeric. These foods are renowned for their anti-inflammatory and immune boosting and immune building properties. And I actually have a video here which Dr. Indra will show you how to put that together. It's quite a popular drink lemon drink with our clients, and you may wish to give it a try and see how you get along with that.
Here's the recipe to my lemon immune booster. Hot water, a squeeze of lemon, turmeric, tiny pinch of black pepper, cinnamon, apple cider vinegar, ginger to your liking, honey for sweetness.
So that's your little
Here's the recipe to my lemon
replaying again. So you were going to talk a little bit more about foods that will also help with energy, haven't you, Shakila?
Yeah, so probably sort of like just to break it down into 3 steps. I would say to focus on building a healthy plate to increase the nutritional value of your meals would be a good starting place. And so you could sort of just start with breakfast, for example, and then once you've sort of happy with that, then you can move on to lunch and dinner. So to build a healthy plate, I would say it includes a good source of quality protein. So that's things like grass-fed meat, poultry, fish or legumes. And then maybe add some healthy fats in there as well. So things like avocados, nuts, seeds, and olive oil. And then perhaps balance it out with lots of colourful and fibrous vegetables and some whole grains. I'd also say suggest that you eat 3 balanced meals in a day. So that's about maybe 3 to 4 hours within a gap between each meal. This is to help stabilise your blood sugar levels, but also to sustain your energy. And finally, hydration is also key. Especially as the weather gets warmer, or perhaps if you're exercising more than usual, to aim to drink maybe something around 1.5 to 2 litres of fluids throughout the day. So that could include things like filtered water, herbal teas, bone broths and smoothies. So I think as a starting point, those 3 tips would be a good place to start, and I hope that answers Carol's question.
That's great, Shakila. We thought when we were answering these questions that we would just give you top 3 tips about it, and if this webinar goes well, then what we will end up doing is maybe breaking down each one and then maybe doing a webinar specifically about immune, because we could talk a lot about immune and nutrition, couldn't we, Shakila?
Yeah, absolutely. it's such a vast topic, so it's just nice sometimes to just break it down into simple steps.
So our next question is from Kathryn. Underactive thyroid, low energy, low moods in the morning. And what's your opinion about vitamin D in the role of respiratory disease, and generally what do people do to boost their health in light of COVID, and what do you think about a vaccine? So Kathryn, we're going to talk a little bit about thyroid, and we've talked a little bit about foods that can help with energy and things like that, just with what Shakila has also mentioned. So we're going to ask, we're just going to talk a little bit about vitamin D. So Elsa, you see a lot of patients who have vitamin D deficiency, don't you, in your practice?
Absolutely. I think some of that is because of our patient population. We have quite a lot of Southeast Asians and Afro-Caribbeans. Because they're living so far north in the UK, it's difficult when you have a darker skin to absorb enough ultraviolet to make your own vitamin D. And particularly if you work indoors all day as well, you don't have a chance to be out in the sun. So that's maybe one reason why people are low.
So with vitamin D, there has been some evidence, hasn't there, for its role in respiratory illness. And there's some research papers that have shown that taking regular vitamin D, I think there was a paper which was about older patients in residential homes taking vitamin D reduced their respiratory illnesses. So vitamin D is another key nutrient in your immune system. Would you agree with that, Meeta?
Yeah, I would. Vitamin D is so critical for health. Virtually every cell in the body has a vitamin D receptor. and it can influence and express more than 200 genes. So it regulates the immune function, cell growth, neuromuscular function, and helps protect against osteoporosis, rickets, bone fractures. So yeah, it's got a huge impact on our health.
Definitely. So hopefully we've answered some of it. In terms of answering about the vaccine, I think that that's a whole lecture in itself, especially the vaccine relating to COVID. So we're going to move to the next question. Hajra, managing to eat healthily on a budget. Since organic food is so expensive, even the Dirty Dozen fruit is expensive to buy for a family of 5. So this question is really interesting because we are a team that involves a nutritional therapist as well as health coaches and the doctors. We have a wide range of expertise between all of us. And this question really falls under the health coaching. So when you come to see us and you're working with our team, and this is something that you are struggling with, the health coaches are the ones that will be able to help you figure out what the best way forward for you is this. So we've asked Roz to kind of give us an idea of what she would do to support Hajra if Hajra came to see her.
Hi everybody. That's a really good question to ask, because organic food can be a little bit more expensive, and it's great that you've actually know about the Dirty Dozen. For those of you who don't, this is something that the Pesticide Action Network put together in the UK. They tested a wide range of fruit and veg and put together lists of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So the Clean 15 were the ones which didn't have as much residue of pesticides, and the Dirty Dozen were the ones that had 8 or more different pesticides on them. So that's why it's a really good idea to actually make sure that you eat, if you're eating the Dirty Dozen foods, you actually do buy organic. But it's not as necessary with the Clean 15, so you can balance that out a little bit more financially. Another tip is to eat seasonally. Seasonal veg is often that bit cheaper. You can look in local supermarkets for their organic ranges, and they do tend to be a little bit cheaper than some of the kind of specialised shops. Also, when you're in the supermarket, you can find out when they reduce their prices, and then stock up and maybe freeze them immediately, so that you're saving a little bit of cash there. Another good idea is to contact local farms and farm shops and ask about their practices, because some farms, even though they're not kind of registered organic, can have better practices than others. There are many box schemes around the country which do sell organic fruit and veg and food, meat, etc. If you're buying kind of the boxes, the box schemes, they do tend to be a bit cheaper than the individually priced fruit and veg. I would say if you want to, if you have the ability to freeze food, you could buy in bulk online, because that can reduce some cost. And with things like organic meats, you can go for quality rather than quantity when it comes to the meat, because then the meat, you're getting more nutrient density anyway if you're getting better quality meat. I would also suggest meal planning. That can save on costs when you're going on the supermarket, because I don't know about you, but if I go without a list and I haven't made a plan, I always tend to buy a lot more and things I don't necessarily need. So that can help. And also using leftovers, reducing waste. For example, you could buy an organic chicken, you could have a roast dinner, a meal with the leftovers, and then you could use the carcass for bone broth, which kind of really gets the most value out of it. And ultimately, it's kind of an investment in your health. You can also use things like lentils, beans and chickpeas, which are a little bit cheaper food to bulk out your meals. But it's about being kind to yourself as well, I think. So don't beat yourself up if you can't buy 100% everything organic. You know, start small by starting to changing a couple of things and take it from there. because ultimately we don't want to be getting stressed. So I hope that helps, Hajra.
Michaela, would you say that eating organic is important?
Yes, it's important if you can source the food and it's affordable, then I would say absolutely it should be at the top of your list. But for example, if you can't get hold of it or for whatever reason, then you can sort of, the choice is, do I have sort of like strawberries versus not having strawberries? I would say have, you know, wholesome real food, but just sort of give it a really good wash. Perhaps you can rinse it in some bicarbonate of soda to get rid of any residue, that sort of would help. So to sort of, when you weigh it up, I would say you're probably better off having the whole foods than sort of like not having it and having more of the processed foods. So yeah.
And Elsa, I was just going to ask, you know, with working with, we were talking about toxins. I guess this is one of the reasons that we kind of look at organic foods, isn't it? Because toxins really do affect, or can affect, certain people.
Absolutely, and that's often down to our genetics, as we'll see later.
Yeah, definitely. So I hope that's helpful in terms of eating on a budget and also organic foods. Our next question was Michaela. She was going to suggest a functional medicine approach to underactive thyroid. What do you do if levels are borderline and you're not sure if you want to become reliant on taking thyroxine? Thank you so much, Michaela, for this question. We see a lot of hypothyroid patients in our practice, and also patients that are sort of borderline hypothyroid. We are on the Thyroid UK website, so we tend to see a number of patients with this. So I'm going to ask Mita to just talk a little bit, because we've seen quite a few, and she's just going to give you a brief overview of how we approach this kind of condition.
Yeah, thank you. So thyroid function is so important. It causes so many problems, both mentally and physically, when our thyroid's not working properly. And the reason why we have so many patients with thyroid dysfunction, and the numbers are going up all the time, all around the world, is due to things.
Oh, as Mita
dietary factors, medications, and toxins. With regards to stress, who doesn't have stress? But we should be able to move forward with our stress and try and do something about it. And in the clinic, we look at the thyroid from a stress point of view by looking upstream, which we do in functional medicine anyway, where we look at the adrenal glands first, which will produce the stress hormones. Because if we can address that, then a lot of the time, more downstream to the thyroid gland, and things will improve. Inflammation, we've talked about already. We know that inflammation is the root cause of all chronic disease. And again, Indra spoke about infections. So in clinic, we're always looking for the root cause of your inflammation and working with that, and also looking for infections, even chronic low-grade infections that you may not be aware of, but we find when we do our investigations. The dietary factors are huge in thyroid disease. There's the link with gluten, which is an absolutely fascinating topic all in itself, which you could spend a whole webinar just talking about. And there's also foods that really do affect the thyroid in a really negative way, and we call those kind of foods goitrogens, like cruciferous vegetables and soy.
Oh, I've kind of moved it. Sorry, Mita.
Yeah.
So,
from a nutritional point of view, we could do quite a lot. We will find that most patients have insufficiencies in nutrition, and as you can see on the slide there, We have problems with zinc deficiency, selenium deficiency, iron, and there's also iodine, which vegetarians and vegans are quite susceptible to in deficiency, and the vitamins that you have there, especially A and D. So there's plenty you can do there to help with supplementing your nutrition by eating these kind of foods.
Shakila, what would you say is your key thing for thyroid that you see that you find most people needing support with?
I think with sort of probably selenium and probably B vitamins, I would also say, because the B vitamins are going to help to convert the food into energy and prevent that sort of malabsorption that takes place in most people that are needing support with their thyroid. So more sort of like recommending foods like rich sources of sources of like red meat, poultry, fish, brown rice and mushrooms and those kind of foods. But what you generally find if you eat whole foods, you tend to get an array of nutrients within that whole food, and those vitamins and those minerals, they all work synergistically together to sort of like give you that health and wellness. But in generally I tend to find that people are low on B vitamins, and that ties in a little bit with sort of like low energy and low mood and immune support, and then obviously with thyroid as well, and as well as all the nutrients that Dr. Meter talked about as well.
Thank you. Hope that helps. It's a massive topic and we could talk a lot in that, but we've just kind of given you a brief overview of what we would do. And from what it sounds like, Mita, it's more about finding out what the root of why your adrenals are not, why your thyroid is not working so effectively. So this kind of follows on to our next question where Kathryn had mentioned, and there was a couple of questions about menopause. I think we need to do a whole webinar about menopause and how we approach it. Could you say something around menopause, anxiety, and managing your symptoms instead of turning to HRT? So thank you, Kathryn, for your question. So it kind of follows on with what Mita was saying. All our hormones are all interlinked. So our thyroid, our adrenal hormones, and our sex hormones, our female hormones, are all interlinked together. So this is our whole endocrine system. And if all of them keep each other in balance and in check. So what we're learning and what we're finding about menopause is that when the ovaries sort of reduce their capacity to produce the estrogen and progesterone, the adrenal glands should naturally take over and produce enough for the body to do this. But with our lifestyle as at the moment, our adrenals are a little bit under pressure is probably the right way to put it. And when they are producing a lot more of the stressor hormones, so the stress hormones are hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline and those kind of things. When they're producing that, the body then has to prioritize the stress hormone because it has to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, and it therefore reduces the amount of sex hormones that it's producing. And that's when we start to get more symptoms. So what we're finding is that even though the menopause, the estrogen sets our temperature regulation and changes the sensitivity of it when we drop our estrogen levels, it's actually the stress hormones that trigger off the things like your hot flashes. So when we're talking about menopause in our clinic, we're really wanting to find out where your hormones are sitting, what is the balance of your hormones, and we actually use a urinary test, which is called the Dutch test, which tells us about your estrogen and your progesterone, but it also tells us about your adrenal glands as well. So when we're thinking about menopause, we really want to be understanding what the balance of your hormones are. And because now we know that adrenal glands, when they're overactive and are producing all your stress hormones, this is where your anxiety also then shows up. When we're dealing with the menopause and with balancing our hormones, food is so important. And the reason that food is very important is down to one of the things that Shakila said. It's about balancing your blood sugar. Allowing yourself to balance your blood sugar means that your whole body just starts to feel a lot calmer and a lot less noise there. Would you say that's right, Shakila?
Yes, absolutely. I think sort of like also as a nation, we've shied away from fats, and that's another wonderful food where I'd say probably again in clinic we see that not many of our clients are eating enough healthy fats, because that really helps to stabilize the blood sugar levels as well as balancing hormones and so many other things that it does. So things again like, you know, nuts, seeds, avocados, olive oil, sort of oily fish and those kind of foods. So it's just about, I seem to always go back to the build your plate, a healthy plate. So making sure that you have got you know, healthy sources of protein, healthy sources of good quality fat, and lots of vegetables. So you're getting that sort of array of nutrients, of those macronutrients and those micronutrients, which are so key for health and wellness and for every system in the body.
So thank you so much, Shakila, because I think good fats are so key, and because fats are one of the basic components that build our hormones as well, isn't it? So
yeah,
we need to have adequate fats in our body. So when we were talking about that, we were also talking about the stress aspect and anxiety aspect. And our health coaches are absolutely brilliant in helping us to find where the stress is coming from. From often our patients, we're not really sure where the stress is coming from. They say that we're fine, we're doing everything, but we're experiencing these symptoms. So our health coaches help our patients to understand how their life is impacting on their health and what they need to do to support that. Fiona, what's your top tip for stress?
I think top tip would be taking time for yourself. We all have this tendency to get on the hamster cage and keep going and keep going and keep going. And if I may, I would say another tip would be to, and again, we tend to ignore this, is to listen to your body. For instance, if we're talking about stress at work, your body tends to whisper to you before it starts to yell. And what I mean by that is that when you're not controlling your stress at work, or you're being forced into far more stress than you actually want to cope with, it can manifest itself as all sorts of things like backache, or headache, or migraines, or eye strain, or gut issues. And we tend to just keep going because it doesn't seem, you know, bad enough to go off sick. But if we don't take a look at those and say, do you know what, it's time I need to start making some changes, it can then these things can then lead to more serious health issues.
Absolutely, and that's what as I said at the beginning, these symptoms are love letters. They're trying to tell us where our body's out of balance. This kind of leads us to the next question. I hope that's helpful to Karen. 1 second. Is somebody there? No, that's fine. Helpful to Karen. We will be doing probably a webinar just about menopause and our approach to that. So the next question is for Ellen. Ellen asked quite a specific question about to relieve the pain of hypersplenism. Found out that after being diagnosed with celiac, I'm sticking to a strict diet, but the pain that I get at times can be challenging. Now, celiac and autoimmune conditions are quite a big part of what we deal with at the practice. And we haven't decided to focus on that aspect of this question at this point, but managing pain is actually a specialism of Fiona, our health coach. She has her own clinic, which she manages, where I think it's called Hajra Pain Management, isn't it, Fiona?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Where you're focusing on pain. So do you want to give us some top tips about pain management?
Yes, I will. Yeah, thanks, Helen, for your question. Again, chronic pain is a massive, massive issue. So I thought I'd just break it down into 3 main areas where I would work with the people that I see. And by the time they come to our clinic, they have already been on in different directions, painkillers, epidurals, nerve blocks, you name it, TENS machines, you name it. They've been trying this for some years in order to alleviate their pain, but they've never really understood their own pain. And what I mean by that is it's not about diagnosis, it's about how your pain is manifesting itself in your body, and it will be different for every single person. So when I'm working with our patients, we get them to understand their pain. I ask them to fill in a diary where it looks at 3 elements. It looks at on that day where they're filling in the diary, what's their intensity of the pain, where 10 is max, and 1 to 10, where 10 is max. But also what was happening that week, or the day before, or 2 days before, or did they have a rubbish night's sleep the night before that may have led to that flare up. And the other important element, which, as I say, I could probably do a whole seminar about, is how negative thoughts can impact the severity of your chronic pain. So I asked them to put what were their thoughts at the time when they were having that severe pain. And we can work on all of those elements. The other area is having identified what those triggers may be. We work together to formulate some strategies to overcome these, so that it's not when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling an awful lot of pain, it's not dictating the whole day, because we've already discussed how we can overcome that flare up. And the other thing is, it's about looking at preventing them by pacing yourself. And I have to say, in the past, I was pretty rubbish at that, but I've learnt my lesson. Because the temptation is, when the pain is less, that you've got all these outstanding jobs that you've had to leave when you weren't so good, and you try to get them all filled in one day. As I say, there's a whole lot to this. So it's about saying, well, actually, that's not that important. I can still leave that another week or I can, more than that, actually, I can delegate it to somebody else in the family. And then the third element is about anticipating future stresses. So the scenario I would give is, you've got a friend's wedding and you're going on a journey 150 miles to see your son the next day, and on the way back you're going to call in with some friends. Now, is that a feasible option to do that, or could you spread it over, a month or whatever? And as I say, I'm guided by the individual on what works best for them, but I just highlight not taking on too much in the future, and as I say, going back to this pacing. And the other element is pain messages are due to an oversensitized brain, whereby it could even be a change in temperature. It could be stress is a major issue here. More stress in your life. It could be, as I say, a bad night's sleep. And this oversensitized brain just brings on severe pain. It will tell you to stop what you're doing by giving these pain messages. So there's a number of techniques, and as I say, there are a number, because it's very much individualized to what suits a particular patient and their pain. But there's a number of techniques that we use to calm down those messages, and very effective in doing that. And that's how we go about managing pain as a health coach.
That's amazing. Thanks a lot, Fiona. Because I think one thing that we realize as medics is that we realize that pain is another sign of inflammation. So as a team, we would be looking to find out where the inflammation could be coming from and what is it that's driving the immune system to express that kind of inflammation. So as you can see, having a sort of a multidisciplinary approach allows a patient to look at it from different angles. Would you say that's right, Ailsa?
Absolutely.
We're going to move on to the next question. I hope that answers your question, Ellen. And if you want to talk specifically about the hypersplenism, please, do book in with us and we can organise a chat about that. Next question is for Ailsa. This is from Jenny. She was enjoying her public health collaborative talks, and she wanted to know a little bit about MTHFR and supplementation. What is it? How important is it? And how do you treat it when there's skepticism in mainstream medicine? Tough little question, Ailsa, for you.
Yeah, thank you. So MTHFR is a complex subject, but I'm just going to touch on some of the essential points, because it, like some of the other topics, it could be a topic for a webinar on its own. So MTHFR is an enzyme which is coded for by a gene called MTHFR. So this enzyme is crucial for the function of all sorts of different chemical processes in the body that all start with something called the methylation cycle, which it's a bit like a relay race where the baton is being passed from compound to compound, so that it's a methyl group, which is a central carbon, and 3 hydrogens, which is being passed around. And now that genetic testing is available, we know that many people have abnormalities in the MTHFR gene, which are called SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms. And these can result in anything between a 20 and a 70% reduction in the function of this enzyme. So, and given that methylation is really important for detoxifying toxins, obviously if you've got 70% reduction in that enzyme, then you're not going to detoxify very well. But however, your genes are not your destiny. You're born with a certain set of genes, but they're like the loaded gun. It's our interaction with the environment, our lifestyle, which is what pulls the trigger and switches genes on and off. So what can we do? What I've done is to put together some top tips for a healthy methylation cycle. Probably one of the most important things is to cut out artificial folic acid supplements or foods that are fortified with folic acid, because this is an artificial compound and it binds to the receptors and it stays there, which means that the receptors can't take up the natural folate from foods to be used. The second thing is to ensure adequate intake of the key nutrients that are required for the methylation process. So that's riboflavin or vitamin B2, which you can get from liver, lamb, mushrooms, spinach, almonds, wild salmon, eggs. Folate, obviously, from green leafy vegetables, peas, beans, lentils, squash. Vitamin B12, which is an area of interest for me, from red meat, salmon, clams, mussels, eggs. Vegetarians and vegans are bound to be short of vitamin B12, so they need to be taking a supplement because you can't get adequate B12 from a vegetarian or vegan diet. Magnesium from dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, fish, beans, avocados and whole grains. And as Shakila mentioned earlier, good quality protein from animal or plant sources. The third thing is to clean up your environment. So what you want to do is to reduce the input into what I call your toxic bucket, because our detoxification systems can only cope with a certain amount coming into the bucket. And once that bucket starts to overflow, that's when you get symptoms. Methylation is just one of the things that helps to empty the bucket. So if we can reduce the input into the bucket, we're taking the load off that methylation cycle. So try to avoid exposure to unnecessary chemicals, such as in plastics. So try to drink water out of glass bottles or stainless steel rather than plastic. Processed foods contain lots and lots of chemicals. If you look at an ingredients list and you don't recognize some of the ingredients that are chemicals, then personally I wouldn't eat it. Cleaning and personal care products, we're lucky that nowadays there are lots of cleaner alternatives even in the supermarkets, or I've started experimenting with making my own using some rubbing alcohol and white vinegar and some essential oils, and they seem to work just as well. Personal care products, and filter your drinking water. And as we said earlier, eat organic where possible. I've actually put a fourth one on, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is about ensuring good quality restorative sleep. Because actually, what we don't realise is when we're asleep, not only are we getting rest, but it's a time when our biochemical systems are really busy and they're actually doing a whole lot of detoxification and repair overnight. One analogy I heard was it's like, you know, the cleaners are in there and they're sweeping up the corridors and bagging up the rubbish, getting ready to put it out the next morning. And that makes sense. Most people go to the toilet in the morning. My top 4 tips.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Elsa. Hope that answers your question, Jenny. So these were some of the questions that we actually got on our Facebook page. So thank you everybody for putting out the questions, and I hope people have enjoyed that. And we're just going to now open it out to whoever's here if they want to ask any questions about what we've talked about, or yeah, any questions that you have. Just either unmute yourself and take your video off, or put a chat on, put a question on chat and I can ask the team. We have put them all into silence, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Nicola.
Hi, Dr. Indra, thank you. I'd like to ask, you were saying before about B12 for a vegan. Any suggestions on ways to get that, or is it strictly through supplement only? I know I take some things that have got like small amounts of B12 in, but I've been vegan for a long time, so I do feel like I would be lacking in B12 quite a lot, to be honest.
I will refer that question to Shakila, our nutritionist.
You can get sort of B12 foods in B12, but mainly they are from animal sources. So I would say that you would certainly benefit from supplementation. When we work with our clients in clinic, we take sort of like a full food diary, typical food diary, to try to understand what you're having for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And from that we can sort of determine whether you need to add in some supplementation there, and sort of like other supplements that would work synergistically with that to sort of like support you along the way. So that's how we tend to sort of manage that in clinic.
Thank you, Dr. Indra, thank you.
No worries. Andrew has put a question here. Regular exercise is widely accepted as essential to maintain good health and vitality. However, would excessive or overly intense periods of exercise have a detrimental effect on the body's immune system and an individual's ability to recover from illness? Who would like to answer that question? Mita, go for it.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for your question. From a thyroid point of view, there's plenty of studies done where over-exercising can actually diminish the thyroid hormone production. So it wouldn't be such a good idea. And I suspect that that's the same for all our hormonal functions.
Definitely following on from what Mita was saying, if your exercise triggers adrenaline and cortisol as a part of a stress response, for small amounts, that's okay. But if you're already inflamed and then you're adding this to an inflamed body, what you tend to find that it does diminish your innate immune system and therefore affect your immune response to chronic infections and things.
I would also add to that about monitoring the effects of your exercise, so that if it's making you feel worse, then you know to cut it back a bit. And it goes back to what I said earlier about listening to your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope that helps, Andrew. Elaine, is vitamin D we buy in the supermarket sufficient as a supplement? Ailsa.
I think I would firstly look at the type of vitamin D. So you want vitamin D3 rather than D2, which is a plant of plant origin. Generally, in terms of supplements, liquids are absorbed best. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so actually, if it is in a drop form, suspended in oil, then you're going to absorb it better. The next best absorbed is powder that's dissolved in water, then a capsule. Tablets are probably the least well absorbed. I think vitamin D that you buy in the supermarket, I've not looked, but I suspect that it's a tablet.
I guess there's the other thing is about the dosing of it, and we use a very comprehensive blood test to kind of find out what levels your vitamin D is at, and we tend to supplement as one of the core things that we were saying is that we use vitality rather than just whether it's abnormal or normal. So we want to be getting you to a level that's vital for you rather than necessarily just above normal.
I could say a little bit about vitamin D supplementation if you want.
Go for it.
So Public Health England recommends that everybody in the UK should take a vitamin D supplement through the winter months from about September through April. Because even if it's a sunny day, there's not enough ultraviolet to be able to make your own vitamin D from skin exposure, and it's probably too cold to expose your skin anyway. So they recommend a dose of 1,000 international units a day. Certainly, as I mentioned before, people with a darker skin living in the UK, I always recommend they take vitamin D all year round, particularly if they work indoors. If you find from a blood test that you're vitamin D deficient, then the NHS will prescribe 20,000 international units to be taken twice a week for 8 weeks, and then they leave you to take an over-the-counter supplement. So just take, you really need to know your vitamin D status, because if you are significantly deficient, taking 1,000 or 2,000 international units of vitamin D is not going to correct that deficiency. So really you need to be testing.
We have thank you, Ailsa. We have another question on our chat one from Trisha. Have you any advice for hot flushes? Who's going to take that one? Go for it, Mita.
So when we're talking about hot flushes, and particularly during the menopause, as we said before, the hot flushes are not actually coming from the fact that your estrogen levels are falling. They're coming from the fact that your estrogen levels are falling, and it is unmasking the other hormones that are higher. And these hormones are the adrenaline and noradrenaline. And it's these hormones that are causing your hot flushes. You had plenty of estrogen that masked this, but now that you're going through menopause and the estrogen level is falling, it means that you're able to feel these other hormones. And as we've said before, they're secreted from the adrenal glands. And unfortunately, due to our lifestyle and culture, we are constantly trickling out adrenaline and noradrenaline because of stress and the way we live, and the fact that we don't listen to our bodies, and the fact that we do overdo everything. So we need to have a look at that side of your lifestyle and your life and your stresses, etc., to help with hot flushes.
One of the things that I think has been used for this is some kind of mindful meditation, some kind of breathing exercises that you can be using regularly through the day. One of the breathing exercises that we recommend at our practice is something called 4-7-8 breathing. This kind of triggers the diaphragm, and it's really easy to do, and it gets us into what we call the parasympathetic, which is our rest, digest and heal phase. There are loads of different breathing exercises out there. This one apparently has some research behind it to try and help. We often advise people to try and do that before they eat, so that it helps them get their bodies into a right state to help. And also when you're doing more of it and you're calming your whole sympathetic system, you will find that your number of hot flushes should decrease with it as well. Mita.
And there's also, because I do Kundalini yoga as well, there's also some lovely breath techniques that you can do to actually put you into that parasympathetic mood, and also to actually cool not just yourself down physically, but also mentally, with even nostril breathing as well.
Thank you, Tricia.
Dr. Indra, there's also some teas that we could recommend as well, okay, to sort of like help with that. So some gentle teas like chamomile, red clover tea, green tea, that can be hit and miss, but some people have reported that they do really well with that. But particularly chamomile and red raspberry leaf tea.
Amazing, thank you. Next question we have on here from Rupali. Thank you so much, found this very interesting. I have endometriosis, and what would you say would be the top 3 changes one should make? I've done some reading, but I've found all the nutritional changes slightly overwhelming. I totally get you, Rupali. That's the reason I have my team, and that's why we help you kind of break everything down to small changes. And Shakila's code word, or one that she writes at the bottom of her things, small changes take one small change. Isn't that right, Shakila?
Yeah, small changes and a big difference. Yeah,
big
absolutely.
Difference.
We try to break things down in our clinic. So just trying to simplify it and sort of like hold your hand through the process so that we can really address nutritional deficiencies and any stressors, you know, sort of like blood work, all the stuff that we do collaboratively works really well.
So when we're thinking about endometriosis, Rupali, I've been working with one of my patients recently on this. And one of the key things with endometriosis is, again, hormonal balance. So the first nutritional change would be to make sure that we're balancing your blood sugar. That would be quite a key thing to do. The second thing would be making sure that you're having adequate good fats, as Shakila was saying, because that's so important for blood sugar management. And the third thing would be managing stress. Stress, I guess, keeps coming up, doesn't it? And we said that right at the beginning, that out of those 5 things that drive inflammation, stress is the top one. I hope that makes answers your question. But those would be our top things that we would do to help with that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Dr.
That's okay. Did you want to ask anything else, Rupali?
So when you said would be the bloods, so would that be I'd have to have a blood test first? I mean, I'd probably contact you privately, but would I have to have a blood test first and then take it on from there?
Blood sugars we can probably manage just by looking at how you're feeling and just looking at your nutritional plan at the moment, and we can help just start you to manage those things. We do a very comprehensive blood test at the practice, but with COVID we've had to shut that down just at the moment, but we should be opening it back up again soon. But there are some finger prick testing that we can do as well to just try and help us understand where you are with everything. Nita.
And also we've got the Dutch test, haven't we?
Yeah, the Dutch test is a urine test, so if we're wanting to understand how your hormones are working, Rupali, then we can use that to understand that, and that gives us some testing that looks at nutritional deficiencies as well. So it tells us about your B12 and vitamin D and all of those not vitamin D, B12, B6, and also about your stress hormones as well.
And it will also give us an idea about your imbalance, because in endometriosis it's you have this estrogen dominance, so we'll be able to see that as well. I have a patient who has endometriosis, but her Dutch test showed that it wasn't imbalance. It was imbalance, and it wasn't an estrogen dominance, and therefore it wasn't the endometriosis that was causing her pain. It was other things, which was fascinating.
Oh, that's interesting. I will get in touch with you. Thank you so much.
No worries. Nice to see you. Diane, I enjoy healthy food, but it can be challenging preparing food the whole family will enjoy. Any suggestions to help with this? Shaquila and Roz, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think the one thing I would say is just to get the family involved, and maybe create meal plans with the family so that they can kind of feel that they're taking kind of ownership of what they're eating as well, and try and introduce kind of maybe a new healthy meal every week that everybody will agree to try, and with an open mind. But yeah, I think participation rather than just kind of being presented with a kind of a healthy bowl of food might be helpful.
It's when you say the word healthy, everybody goes, oh, I can't do that, can't eat that. Shaquila, how do you get your kids to eat different things?
I was going to agree with everything that Ross has just suggested there, but just disguising food is my thing. I'm sort of looking over my shoulder and sort of like mixing things in. But yeah, sort of like just sort of, I think things like sauces and curries and sort of like casseroles and those kind of things. One pot meals are really good because you can get lots of goodness in there, and then you know, none the wiser what's in there. I do apologise. I sort of like lost a little bit of the question because my iPod's just gave in. So, was it just to feed a
whole family, foods that the whole family would enjoy, because it's quite hard to prepare different meals?
Yeah, absolutely. So those kind of things, you know, one pot meals work really well, and just like Ross suggested, getting the family involved, and maybe just sort of writing a list out of, you know, sort of like what foods everybody enjoys, and participation is going to be key in that also. And also, I know sort of it's not that easy now, but shopping together as a family is a good one as well, because, you know, sort of you find that there's foods and flavours that you may sort of be surprised when you're in that environment, and your children might pick something out and you may not realise that that's something that they really enjoy. So yes, trial and error.
As long as it's not chocolate.
I would say make green mash. My kids ate green mash. Mashed potato with broccoli. Gives you superpowers.
That's good. That's good. I hope that helps, Diane. Wendy Davey, I have dilated cardiomyopathy and fatigue is an issue after a working day, affecting hobbies and social life. Can diet make a difference, or do I need to accept it because of my diagnosis? Ailsa.
Oh gosh. I mean, I would say from a functional medicine point of view, two people with the same condition will have different underlying causes. So until we've made an assessment of an individual, it's difficult to give personalised advice. So it's what's the underlying cause of the cardiomyopathy.
I think when we're thinking,
we'd be looking at mitochondrial function, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think as Elsa said, it's hard to give specific, but when we're thinking about health, health is on a spectrum where you have really severe illness and then we have vitality at one end, and we're all somewhere along that health spectrum. So we never say using this technique that we would cure or, you know, heal or anything like that, but what we want to do is what we can do to move you along that spectrum so that you are feeling a bit better than where you are, because I think fatigue is probably the symptom that every single or a lot of our patients are experiencing. And what we tend to find is that once we have addressed various different aspects, the perception of tiredness changes, how you deal with the tiredness changes, and also the foods and everything do and can improve the tiredness. So Wendy, it may not just be your heart, it may be a number of different things, as Dr. Ailsa was saying. Anybody want to add anything?
I think also, going back to what we said earlier, is it possible to look at your working day and see what is causing you the most stress that could be then leading to your fatigue after work, and addressing those areas?
Absolutely. So it's about understanding the whole picture, isn't it? And
yeah.
seeing what we can do to manage it. Thank you, Wendy. Jacqueline Ryan, I was feeling tired after eating a side of blood sugar balance issues. Shakila?
It could be one of the reasons. We often hear about this again in clinic. It could just be that sort of you're not absorbing your nutrients very well and you need some support with that. So that could be sort of like if you have low stomach acid, for example, that means the body is having to work extra hard to sort of digest those nutrients, and it's struggling to absorb the nutrients because you may be lacking digestive enzymes and acid. So again, that is something that by taking a whole health history and so looking at your food diary as well, maybe there's some deficiencies, you know, your sort of healthy plate may not be as balanced. So just looking at those and then identifying what is the root cause of that problem. Is it dietary? Is it that you need some supplement support? Is it the fact, you know, we tend to start mostly sort of like encourage sort of nutrients through food first and foremost. So again, that would sort of like depend on your food diary and the analysis of that.
So it's coming back to what you said about it could be a sign of blood sugar, but the other thing that I would maybe add to that, it may be a food reactivity that can also happen when you're eating. So we have a number of patients with problems with histamine issues and things like that, which can make you feel a bit tired and a bit foggy-headed after. So analysing and understanding your nutritional plan, as Shakila says, will help us understand what the balance is and whether you are in balance, or if there's some areas that we need to upgrade, whether we need more fats or proteins, and how we're digesting the food. Amita?
Also, it's known about how the thyroid, if the thyroid function is not optimal, it can also disturb your glucose intolerance, insulin resistance issues, that kind of thing as well.
The whole hormone balance.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hope that's helped, Jacqueline. Priya George, I've had presumed COVID illness and now I'm on my 10th week with some remaining symptoms of chest pain and shortness of breath on exertion and lethargy. What is the most bothersome is accompanying chronic sinus related symptoms with headache and sinus congestion. Elsa.
Oh, okay. I guess it's about just supporting your immune system and your recovery. So there are some nutrients that are important. So vitamin D we talked about, vitamin C, antioxidants from brightly coloured fruits and vegetables. I know that there are people who are recommending things like quercetin and glutathione as well as antioxidants. Trying to eat unprocessed foods, eating little and often to keep your energy levels up, getting enough rest and sleep, keeping your fluids up. Anything else?
I guess that when we're thinking about post-viral issues, it's about knowing where you started from before the virus hit you.
Yeah.
Because we find that if you're already quite inflamed and then you have the virus, you tend to then further deplete your system. And that's when your immune system then struggles to bring itself back into balance. So what we talked about, those triggers for the immune system, we want to rebalance all of that. And when you were saying about, Priya, you were saying about sinus related illnesses. So one of the things I mentioned on there is chronic infections. So if you are having a chronic infection, then we need to find a way to support your immune system to see the chronic infection and then decrease the inflammation within there. Mita.
It's also one of the other supplementations I thought of was zinc as well. Zinc's really important for the immune system. And also when your body's been through something like this, your gut lining integrity is going to be compromised, and that will also be triggering the immune system to give you these chronic sinus kind of infections as well.
So at the practice, we would be obviously doing an assessment of all of this, understanding where you started from, and then starting with really small steps with your nutrition, first of all, if we needed some supplementation, and then moving on from there, really.
Is there any role for antibiotics if you think it's infection, or would you, in your program, you wouldn't encourage that?
Well, if we think antibiotics are useful, then we will use it, because we're all medically trained, so we can prescribe antibiotics. You know, functional medicine does use all the different aspects to try and treat people, but we are not against medications in any way because they do have their role. We want to understand, why is your immune system not seeing it? And if you are so overloaded with bacteria, then sometimes taking some antibiotics just helps you to reduce that load. And when the load is easier, then your immune system can then bring itself back into balance. Would you say that, Ilse?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We have used antibiotics for some of our patients, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So these were all the questions that we had on the side. If there's anybody else has any questions, please just unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we'll bring this to a close. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for everybody coming on to this. I hope you found this all very useful. What we wanted to do is some of the information that we've given on the slides, we're going to put together as a little information leaflet. And if you're happy with us, we'll just email it out to you. And if you want to speak to any of us, then please get in touch with Sarah, and she can organize a complimentary 10-minute consultation with any of our team at all if you want to talk in a bit more depth about anything. And hopefully we will be having another webinar in about 4 weeks' time, and we will be probably focusing on the immune system and diving further into the immune system and looking at what are the triggers for the immune system, because that's kind of the basics of what we're all dealing with our chronic illness. Does anybody want to add anything else, my team?
No.
No.
So that's brilliant. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
And
Thank
we'll
you very much.
see you soon.
Thanks for your questions.
Bye.
Thank you for your questions.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh gosh, me again. Right, go on.
It's just on the right hand side.
Oh dear, sorry. Thank you. Oh, normally it's me. Sorry. Thank you.
You're all right. Bye.
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 Bye. Stop the recording.